Hello, Pastor Tyler here. It is Thursday, so I observe Thursdays in black by wearing black towards a world without rape and violence. It is December 10th, and so there's a few other things that are happening. It is Human Rights Day, and so we're mindful of places in the world where people don't have rights and freedoms that we might take for granted here in Canada. And Human Rights Day is also about continually working towards those rights and freedoms in our society and helping everyone access things like healthcare, education, and be able to have meaningful work and not be a target of abuse or violence or such. Also on December 10th this year, as it works out, Hanukkah begins. And so we're mindful of our Jewish neighbors and their festival of lights that begins today. As our throwback Thursday for this day, I want to show you a clip with liturgical composer Marty Haugen. And part of the reason I'm doing that is that it's his 70th birthday this month. This clip dates back to 2008, when my wife and I and our young daughter had about a week with him at a conference in BC. In this clip, you'll hear him talk about the movement from writing just songs and maybe settings of different scriptural passages set to music to writing a full liturgy and the need for some cohesion in the music when you're writing a liturgy. And so he sort of creates this image of writing a song as like maybe a poem or a short story to a liturgy being more like a novel. And one of his sort of directing mantras or mottos in life has been, is there something that fills this need already? And if there isn't, then I'll write something that could fill that need. Which I think is a helpful way to look at music these days. Sometimes we are maybe looking to try and insert things, and maybe that thing already exists. He also speaks a little bit about his contribution to the Evangelical Lutheran Worship Red Hymn Book, which is in the pews of our church and most Lutheran churches, ELCIC Lutheran churches in our synod and country. And the conversation itself is a fairly casual tone about writing hymns and liturgies and instrumentation in his music. You've been doing the church musician thing all your life.
No, I didn't start before I was 12.
Before you were 12, yeah.
13 maybe.
And from the dates that I've seen on the hymns you're credited with, you've been writing church music and songs and hymnody since the 70s. Have you been writing liturgies as long? Is that something that, like full liturgies?
I think when I started writing for the Catholic church I was working for, I started by writing simple things, just psalms or a single acclamation. Sure. The setting requires real dedicated time to write it and then to live with it. So I don't think I actually wrote an entire setting until 85. And I had been published since 78.
Right.
So, yeah, I spent a long time in that setting, just because you want the pieces to be internally consistent.
Right.
And you want to spend time with your congregation singing it.
Yeah.
So it's
Was that Vespers 86?
No, it was a mass called Mass of Creation that I wrote for Catholics.
Yeah.
I inherited a church job and had a really vibrant program, a folk group, and a traditional choir, knowing completely different repertoires. So when I suggested that they would sing together for Monday, Thursday, Good Friday, Saturday, they said, no, this group does that and this group does that because we each have our own repertoire. So I thought, I'm going to write something. And throughout my whole working life, I've tried to say, is there something that fills this need? And then write when I can't find something. And I couldn't find a setting at that point that was published in such a way that a piano and guitar and flutes could do it, or an organ, brass, handbells could do it. Mm-hmm. So I wrote the same setting in 2 versions, 2-part with flute and guitar and piano, and 4-part with organ, brass, and handbells. And I have to say, to some degree, I think it got published and was used because there wasn't anything out there at that point like it. And ironically, when the ELW was in its sort of planning stages, they commissioned 2 of us to write new settings. The initial idea was that we were supposed to write 3 arrangements of the same setting, and I struggled with that for a long time. There is a different sound, I think, in Lutheran music than in Roman Catholic music. I can't really sort of describe it easily, but there is a different sound. And I think when they finally got the 2 settings that were written by me and one other composer, and they looked at the 3 arrangements, they said, this isn't going to work. So they dropped that idea. But the first setting was written specifically for 2 different ensembles, so that then I said to them, we're going to sing Holy Thursday and we're going to use your setting. Then I said to the folk group, we're going to sing Holy Thursday and we're going to use your setting.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and that's part of, I think, what your music has done for the church over the past couple of decades is brought in some of that new instrumentation and at the same time kept a real musicality and reverence for the music, I think.
I don't think I brought in new instrumentation. There were guitars there before I wrote, and there was organs there before I wrote. It's just that I was trying to imagine how they could function within the same music program happily.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've described our congregation as, we're extremely musical. We have flute and guitar basically every week, and I say, but not that kind of guitar. Because they think it'll be praise songs and whatnot.
Yeah.
This is a different...
I was aware that when I took organ lessons, they sat me down in the room, practice room, and said, play what's on the page. And you could, some really good players get to improvisation, but for the first several years, you're just writing what's on the page. Mm-hmm. And when I learned guitar, I listened to records and just sort of improvised. 2 completely different sort of ways of approaching music. Mm-hmm. So it's not surprising that organists have in the past sometimes said if those guitarists could learn to play exactly what's written, we'd be fine. And the guitarists say if the organist would loosen up a bit, we'd be just fine. But you have these different universes of music making. And I think people will be surprised how much repertoire can cross over.
Yeah, yeah. Right.
If you think creatively.
In both directions, like guitar to organ,
mm-hmm.
organ to...
Yeah. I mean, I get a lot of complaints. Lutherans know now the Feast and Celebration, and that was deliberately written for piano because it was called an alternative service. And my assumption was that most Lutheran churches had organ, and I thought that they won't use this at that service. But then I've had complaints from organists saying, you need to write an organ version because this doesn't work on organ. And I said, no, it doesn't. But I wasn't thinking the same way with that. I wasn't thinking that would cross over so much.
Yeah.
I wonder, when you think about a guitar, you're writing it for a guitar, interesting keys and chords and things, are you writing it for someone who is going to do some lovely finger-picking work?
Depends.
Yeah.
And I have to say that when I was working full-time in the parish, I played the guitar more. And so when I wrote more with the guitar in mind. Because as you know, there's things that just don't lay well on the guitar at all, both in terms of the rhythms and the chords. Unfortunately, or maybe, I get to work with these guitarists now. No matter what I give them, they can play it. But I have to, and I was commissioned to write a piece for a church in Minnesota, and they got it and they said, our sopranos can't sing this descant. And it hadn't crossed my mind, and I thought back in the days when I thought, yeah, my sopranos couldn't have either, but I can hire sopranos who can.
Well, the guitar players you hired could play anything.
Yeah, and that's the danger of leaving a parish, is when you're writing in a parish, you have to write from inside the realities of a parish music program, and very few of them can do everything. You have to have limitations.
Yeah.
You can usually tell, whether I wrote something on guitar or not. Like All Are Welcome is not a good guitar piece. It just doesn't lay well on guitar. And a piece like Canticle of the Sun, which I wrote way long ago, I wrote it on guitar, and it's much better on guitar than on piano. So it depends.
We play anything.
Yeah,
We
I
try
mean,
it.
and you're probably representative of more and more congregations who, or at least the ones that are really involved in good worship, is trying to say, how do you bridge those things?
Our closing for today is one of Marty's newer pieces. It was written in 2016. And maybe the dates are worth noting as well. The conversation comes from 2008. And at the time in 2008, Barack Obama hadn't even been elected. I think he was probably becoming a bit of a name, but was still, by July, he would have just been still running for the Democratic nomination. And so I think that's kind of key too when we start talking about faith and life and how what we believe intersects with our daily life. And that comes through certainly in music and in liturgical music and in the words that we use in our faith life. And certainly it comes through in what Marty Haugen writes. And so the piece of music that I'll show you for today was written in 2016. And so another sort of different time. It was written in Advent of 2016, so late in the year. Also another election year in the States. And we used this piece when I was installed as pastor at Gloria Day 1 year ago this week. And the name of the song is called Choose to Hope. What I appreciate about this too is that it was a moment for me at the installation service where there was a gathering of support for Gloria Day and for me individually, a gathering of colleagues, a gathering of friends, a gathering of church family. And the words speak to the moment in the church year in Advent, but they also speak to new life, I think, generally, which was kind of appropriate in that installation moment. And so, as with many of Marty Haugen's hymns, it pointed to images of justice and peace. And so we hear lines like, "Love is born when we choose to believe that every person is sacred. Hope will grow when we choose to believe that we are sisters and brothers." So I think those are directive kinds of lines, prayerful, and for us to meditate on as people. And you'll hear in the song as well, sort of this call and response between hope, love, that when we make a choice, we can create or grow or build hope and love in our lives and in the world. A fitting closing prayer for this Advent season.